Greetings, students. This is week 5 of your semester, spring 2015, and I'm really excited that you are moving forward as we discuss various problems of youth. This week, I just want to give you an overview and some things I want you to think about as you read the text and as you view the PowerPoints that will help guide your reading. So I would first of all suggest that you print out or that you pull up the PowerPoint presentations that I've provided you as you read. It will help highlight. You have 2 books. This is Arnett, I believe Arnett chapter 10, and McWhirter chapter 3, I believe. And we're going to be talking about the impact of school on young people's problems. Now, one of the things I did in providing these 2 texts is I wanted you to have a balance. McWhirter really focuses on challenges of school, challenges that youth face, those at-risk factors. But to balance that out, Arnett tells you that this also influences young people's development. There are aspects, as we talked about the ecological perspective. School ranks in that the meso level of influence, that environmental influence, the meso level. Micro being the family, the individual, meso being the areas in the community that might influence a young person's outcomes. And so school plays a pivotal role because there's so much time spent in school. So as we move forward, you're going to read a lot. You're going to read a lot about challenges in American schools. In Arnett's text, you have a really good comparison between the challenges in American schools versus a global perspective. So I want you to think about your experience as a young person when you were in high school, because now you're in college. Oh my goodness, you passed it. So that means, you've asked some questions about what is in place that makes young people delinquent and choose all of these negative behaviors. But I want you to think about what was going on in school when you were in school. What were some things that helped you get through the hard times, and what were some of those factors that helped make school a little bit more difficult? We know about peer relationships. This is the time in adolescence or in development for young people where peers play a very strong role. Part of it has to do with self-identity, a comparison. How well am I functioning as a young person versus my counterparts? And then we talk about minority status. Your text is going to give you some insight on the role that minority status plays in student success or students' success. And oftentimes when you have those dynamics that are social, such as issues around discrimination and racism, prejudice and all of that, that infiltrates into the school system. We know that American school systems are still very, very segregated. If not in presence, it certainly is in the impact on students' activities. Now, you might disagree because your experience may have been that you were in a school that was very diverse and you didn't have to worry about the teachers who separated you from other students and their levels of performance. But the reality is, if a student has grown up in a community that is high poverty rate, low income, low employment rate, if a student grows up in a household where the parents have not experienced success in education and they don't value education, then a young person's likelihood of succeeding is much more limited. And that Word's text talks about that. It also talks about legislation and how legislation such as, which we know is the exosystem, right? Laws and policies that have been made that nobody called us to ask what we thought about how schools should be run or how the education system, what kind of text we should read. But these policies and rules were made and they impact our young people's lives. We know that No Child Left Behind, although it was created for the best, that all children have equal opportunity for education, that has some flaws. I'd like for you to think about that. And then as you work on your discussion board activity for today, I want you to take under consideration what you've read, what the stats say about student success, the likelihood of dropout rate, the role that family plays in a student dropping out, the role that teachers play and administrators in school systems play. And I'd like for you to reflect on that in your writing. I'd like for you to talk about your own experiences or those experiences of young people that you are observing. as we go through this semester, it's going to be really important that you connect with a young person in your world, a friend, a niece or a nephew, a child, a grandchild. Ask questions as it relates to the text that you're reading, because I think they provide really great insight. We think we know some, we know what the research says, but it's always important to hear from the individuals that are being affected. So throughout the semester, I'm going to encourage you from time to time, ask questions. It's going to tie back into your final project, which is to interview a young person based on various assessment tools. There are a few things I want you to think about as you look at your PowerPoint prompters. One is school culture, and I'm going to ask you to kind of predict what you think the author is going to talk about as it relates to school culture. Is there such thing as a school culture or a subculture within the school system? That's one. Climate, school climate. What do you think the author means by the term school climate? I mean, is it a productive environment where students can learn? Is it a hostile environment? Are students concerned about their safety when they go to school? Or are they concerned about whether their teachers are there just to get a check, or whether they really are interested in their well-being? And how do you know what the school climate is? I want you to think about that as you read. And one other aspect that I want you to consider is those uncomfortable truths about American schools. How are American schools different than European or Asian schools? And your text actually gives you some comparisons in Arnett, in the Arnett text. So I want you to think about, what are those uncomfortable truths? And then as you move forward to become a human service worker or a school teacher or a criminal justice worker, that those all, if you're touching individuals, if you're touching people's lives, you actually are a human service worker. And so as you move forward into your profession, think about how you can change some of those dynamics. What influence will you have when you become the professional in the field and you can affect change, and how school affects young people's lives? I want you to think about those three areas, okay? I hope you find this week very interesting and engaging. We'll talk to you soon. Have a great week.